So up until this point, January 2022, I feel like I've given a lot of information about my commitment to the children when they came into my care, the level of care that they needed, and of course, the intentions on how the foster care placement was supposed to go, which was supposed to be temporary. So the reason I say that is because I'm going to be reading to you a few statements that were made by the CPS caseworker, the attorney ad litem, the CASA workers, the staff at this foster care agency, in regards to just what their thoughts were about the whole placement and these children being placed in my home. And I think it's really important to bring that out. And so on December 31st, 2020, we have of course, a message from the CPS caseworker at the time, just giving me thanks and praise for letting her speak with the children and for making it work during a transitional time, basically just going above and beyond there. And then we have an email from the attorney ad litem at the time, which was on May the 3rd, 2021, and it says, in response to my email, right, because in May of 2021, I was getting more information from CASA explaining to me that things were really not looking good in terms of the children returning home. And I had sent an email to the attorney ad litem just letting her know it's my understanding that the children may not be returned back to their mother. And if that's the case, and if the boys agree, I would like to be considered as an adoptive placement for the boys. And that was in May of 2021. And so her response was, "That's great to hear, right? This is an attorney ad litem that was assigned to these children." And then again on August the 25th, 2021, just sharing with her some concerns that the children were having. This is the attorney ad litem again, and just explaining how they were having some behaviors after visiting with their brothers, their little sibling brothers. And so she says, "Yes, I heard about that incident. Thank you for everything you do for the boys." Okay, that's in August of 2021. Now come January the 10th, 2022, just praising me for how I am basically addressing some of the concerning reports that are coming from the children in regards to possible sexual abuse, right? That's in January 2022. We remember we already had a forensic interview in September of 2021, and they continue to make reports, right? They're continuing to speak. And so there she's giving me praise for how well I'm handling the questions and the reports that the children are sharing with me that are taking place. Then also on January the 27th, 2022, another email from the attorney ad litem, just checking in to see how the therapy sessions went and thanking me for everything that I do for these kiddos, right? Then again on January 27th, and later in the nighttime, they are very blessed to have you. Once again, attorney ad litem for the children. Then also, we also go to February the 18th, 2021, and a text message here from the CASA supervisor from Hays County asking how things are going. During that time, there was a freeze. If you lived in Texas in 2021, we had no electricity and we had no water for 5 days. So here I am at home with no electricity, no water, and 2 foster children, right? And doing the best I can and just communicating with the CASA about how things are going, how we are managing. And her response is, "I'm glad you have the power back. Thanks for the picture. It looks like you have everything under control. Smiley face." In April of 2021, I share a picture with her, the CASA supervisor, about how my foster son is now leading the warm-up exercises in soccer. And her response is, "Wow, they are so lucky to have you." So then we fast forward to December the 8th, 2021, again with this CASA supervisor. And I explained to them that I had actually recommended my foster sons for gifted and talented program. And her response was, very nice. That's amazing, right? That the children are actually thriving and really doing well. And then on June 29th, 2021, I sent over the report cards for how they did that year, ending 2021. And so the CASA volunteer, in this case, says, thank you for these reports. It looks like they made a lot of ground by the last semester. Very impressed, very positive, right? Feedback in regards to how they're continuing to do well. And then again, in July 23rd, 2021, the CASA volunteer had mentioned that she had heard that there was an incident with my foster son, and I had shared with her that yes, there was an incident, and her response was, thank you for continuing to provide a safe and loving environment for the boys. Okay, so that's the CASA volunteer. And then on October 31st, 2021, she tells me, well, I understand. Well, if it's worth anything, I think you're doing a great job in a very difficult situation, right? And if my child had come out crying and I saw a grown adult coming after him and yelling, I would be upset, right? And protect him. I was just trying to get as many perspectives as possible. I've reached out to his therapist and the foster care agency case manager about what happened as well. So that was a situation where my foster son was in a family therapy session with his mother, and he came out crying, like literally crying. The therapist came out of the office and was literally yelling at him in the waiting room, which was to me a problem. My foster son did not feel safe, and I communicated these concerns to the foster care agency and how I wanted to file a complaint against the therapist. And I was instructed by the foster care agency at that time not to do that because of the fact that she didn't want me to look like a problem foster parent, and that it probably wouldn't look good for me. So she discouraged me from reporting this therapist, and so that I would not be looked at as a problem foster parent. Okay. So then we have another email here from actually the foster care agency case manager in regards to me providing some updates about what's going on with the children. And her response is, you are a constant support for him, and I thank you for that. That was for my older foster son. And then again, with regards to a situation at the school where someone had accused me of depriving my foster son of food as a form of punishment, which was actually not true. So I had to send an email out to the school district explaining and asking people to please keep me informed about what's going on over there. And so the response from the foster care agency case manager was, Yvette, this was a very well written and respectful email. You did a great job with this, just as you did for your foster son's ARD. And so another compliment there. These are all actual documented incidences. And again, also with the teacher, I just wanted to share this picture with you of your foster son working so hard this morning. Thank you for talking with him last night. We can already tell a great difference, right? And so working with the school staff to see how we can, minimize the behaviors and get him back on track, right? And so here we also have another statement here of a text message from his behavior therapist, right, that used to come and offer these 24-hour crisis response assistance. So here she says to me, I love it, and I love that smile. Yvette, you are doing such a special thing for these boys. Keep up the amazing job you're doing, and have a wonderful New Year's, right? So she was really excited about the progress that the foster children were making here in my home. And then also another text message from the CASA supervisor, just sending some information about, just updates about how the children are doing. And once again, CASA supervisor says, looks like they are having a great time. Thank you for sharing, exclamation point, right? And so just kind of continuing to keep them engaged and updated on what was going on with the children. Also, another text message from the CPS caseworker at that time, who was on the case from November the 20th, 2020 to at least the end of April of 2022. She says they look like they're having tons of fun, right? Just updating them on just keeping up and keeping tabs, right, on letting them know how the children are doing. And here's another one. Thank you. Love these photos. Now, this is from the CPS caseworker. And just being very helpful to me in regards to anything that I may need from her. And then here's another text message from attorney ad litem, the new attorney ad litem that was assigned to this case in the end of March 2022. So I sent her a photo of just all of my children and my grandchildren and of course my foster children. And her response was, lots of blessings right there. Okay, that's great, you know, very encouraging, right? And so also that when the children were also in my care, there were some interactions that I had with other people, like the executive director of the foster care agency, and just giving them updates on the boys and how well my foster son was doing in basketball, you know, making 12 points in a game. That was incredible. So her response was, wow, that is incredible. Normally our kiddos don't do that well so soon, right? That's from the director. And so I explained, you know, that I mentioned that he's still trying to seem like he's very attached to me. Just some behaviors that the child is having. And the director tells me he is starting to get attached to you and is settling into his new life. Okay. And then another text message from my foster son's therapist. I thought I would say thank you for refreshing me. It has been a long day and night, but talking to you uplifted me. You are doing so well. Okay, that's from my foster son's therapist. And then here we have on November the 26th, right? That was almost right before, like a week after placement. So grateful for your love and commitment to your boys and for all you do every single day. I'm grateful that you allow me to come into your family and help where I can. Okay, that's the therapist again. Here's another text message. You're doing such a great job with the boys you do have. The love you have isn't going to waste. That's for sure. And then here's another update. You know, all these are from their therapists, right? I just love the expressions on his face. Thank you for sharing these, right? Just keeping them updated on how the children are doing. And then also another photo I had sent over to their therapist. That is a precious photo. Look at his self-esteem that is over the top. And you made that happen for him. Keep up the great work. And thank you for sharing his progress with us, right? So all these they sound like they're really positive, right? And then also from the case manager, thank you for doing such a great job, Yvette. And these are all from the foster care agency staff, right? Here's one from the crisis response staff. You can do this. I know that this is so difficult. He is a handful when he is elevated. You have such a kind spirit and have taken on so much to help these two boys. All right, I'll be there if you need me, right? So just on and on, right? We have obviously a lot of affirming statements about how the children were doing in my care, right? Here's another one. I love it. This is from their behavior response person. I love it, and I love that smile. You are doing such a special thing for these boys. Keep up the amazing job you're doing, right? I think we already talked about that one. And so let's see what else we have here. Here's one from another person that was assigned to our family that was with the foster care agency, just praising me. Thank you for this information, Yvette, and thank you for continuing to love and serve these boys through this difficult journey. I'm glad you were able to anticipate that it would be a hard day for them, and that you had planned such a fun evening for them to relax tonight. So I hope you see how much you're doing to change these boys' lives, all right? And there we are with that one. So here's another one from a respite care provider. Hey, Vet, just wanted to say congratulations on making it 1 month with the boys. You're doing such a great job. It's making more and more sense to me. It's making more and more sense to me that you must be a well-oiled machine with lots of experience and love to share. Okay? So that was from a respite provider for us. Here is another text message. We're praying for you, Yvette. You need to know that you're doing a phenomenal job and that the job you're doing is incredibly difficult, exclamation point, right? And a follow-up from a respite provider that was letting me know, here's a picture of the boys playing with my little foster daughter. They are doing wonderful. So just kind of giving a little bit of context about my involvement with the children and their and my constant, commitment to provide a safe and loving environment for them. Here's one from a respite provider that I actually did not use because my foster son was just in a very fragile state. And so her response was, I totally understand. Thanks for taking their fragile state into consideration. They need your love and stability. So here are some affirming statements that I wanted to make sure that everybody had. I think it's important for people to know what the position was and kind of where things were going in regard to how the children were doing in my care, right? And so with that being said, the last thing that we talked about was how there were some concerns that I was bringing up to the foster care agency about some questionable business practices, right? That I felt were putting my foster sons in unsafe situations. So in addition to all of these comments that were made by all of these CASAs, ad litems, the therapists, the directors of the foster care agency. Okay, so we have all these different people putting in all this different input. One of the things I really wanted to share was that I didn't really get to share all of the accomplishments that the children were doing and all of the things that they were doing while they were in my care. I've mentioned a few things like basketball and soccer and swimming lessons, and those are great, but that wasn't the end of it. So I managed to keep them very engaged and also provided them with mentorship. Mentorship is like something they were really recommending for these children. And so what I did was in October, I registered them in October of 2021, right after swim lessons were over. I registered them it's an organization called Trail Life. That's like a all men's boys mentorship program where they learn about character, integrity, community service, just a lot of great things. They met every Monday, at least every Monday, unless there was a holiday. And they were able to teach the boys how to use a hammer, how to plant a plant. Just a lot of really great things that they needed to, it would be good for them to know about their environment and about the community. So they were doing that from October all the way through near April 2022. And so they were very well involved. Let me just say they were very well involved. And during this time, my foster son, my oldest foster son, participated in this cookie decorating contest that they had, and he got first place for most constructive. So mind you, this mentoring organization also allowed them to participate in the Christmas shoebox. Right, every year at Christmas they would get a shoebox and put all kinds of really neat things in there and send it off to people to other countries that don't have. So these were all the things that they were involved in. They were very much enjoying their time. So after that, while they were still doing that, in February I registered them for tumbling. Yes, so they had an interest in maybe doing flips and things like that, being on trampolines. So definitely right away we put them in, well, not we, but I did. I put them in tumbling. And so that was a little bit, of course, a busy schedule, right? So tumbling was on a certain day of the week, and then the mentorship was on a certain day of the week. And then they had their weekly therapy visits. So they were busy at least 3 days a week. And then alternate weeks they were either visiting with their biological mom or not. And so we would just fill in that time with fun Fridays or do just some amazing things. Another thing that I wanted to share with you was I feel that is a progress that they made while they were in my care, which were all the activities that I was involved in order to give these children some normalcy, right? And so what did that look like? So it looked like something like this. I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap of some of the things that I did. And so I already talked about the fact that they had all these provider visits, right? Then they had their weekly individual therapy visits. Then they actually had their visits from October to January with their biological mom. So we were very busy. And in addition to that, one of the things that they did was they had this appointment, I think I mentioned, called a complex care appointment, where the facility would test them physical, occupational, speech to see where they were developmentally, right? And so in March of 2021 was their first visit there. And again, I think I've already told you in my video earlier in this video that the 5-year-old was developmentally diagnosed as a 3.5 to 4-year-old, and the 6-year, 9-month-old was developmentally diagnosed at 6 years old, which was not really too far behind. But in September was the follow-up visit for this complex care appointment to see how they were progressing or how they were improving. And I wanted to say that I'm pleased to say that in September of 2021, my oldest foster son was already developmentally on point, on target, was no longer needing psychotropic medication for sleep. He was doing very well, and so his pediatrician just discontinued that. They also, and my 5-year-old, who was developmentally diagnosed at 3.5 to 4 years old, was now in September of 2021, only 6 months later, developmentally a 5 to 5.5-year-old. So they made a lot of gains during that time. Additionally, my foster son, my oldest foster son, he was actually having some vision problems when we first had his appointment, where he had like it was a 20/25 vision on his right eye, 20/80 in his left eye. Okay, and so after 6 months, his left eye literally improved by half. So it was 20/25 on the right eye, 20/40 on the left eye. So in addition to those things, right, all these improvements that they made, there were other things that we did that I was able to do with them once they were able to be adjusted and regulated. We were able to spend time with my family. We were able to do birthday parties. We were able to be out with in the community without worrying about safety. So some of the things that we did was we went to carnivals. I took them to petting zoos. They got pony rides. We attended and participated in community-held arts and crafts events. We visited several parks. We went to various indoor playgrounds, Jumping World, Play Space, It's Pizza, Urban Air. We visited to the beach. We did bike riding. We did baking activities. We went to splash parks. You know, also what I did was we participated in some of the foster care agency events where they had like food and fun and bouncy houses. We did birthdays with their sibling brothers, birthdays with my grandchildren and my children. They attended all the family gatherings. They went to all family vacations. We went to baseball games at local parks. So just really busy. And after that, we do snow cones. And it was just a really fun-filled weekend on a regular basis. And so with that being said, I just wanted to recap some of the things that we did get to do that were positive. In addition to that, their report cards were excellent, right? And so with all the provider visits that they had 0 absences during this time, and maybe one excused tardy or 2 tardies at the most. But other than that, they had an excellent, perfect attendance, right? So it's important for you to kind of see what type of a life they had here in my home. I was very engaged with the school and offering educational academic support to the children and also to the staff to make sure that they would be successful in regards to keeping them up to date on, hey, the therapy sessions have started, now the therapy sessions have ended, here's kind of what's going on here, the temperature at home, here's kind of some things to look out for. Just trying to be really helpful to the staff to make sure that they can better assist them, right? And so about 1,290 minutes of phone time between Clear Creek ISD and myself. Um, it wasn't all bad. Most of it was how we can collaborate and to make sure that we can keep the children on task, right? And how we can make them successful. And it did pay off, of course, because you know their report cards at the end of the year, their final report cards were threes and fours. So, well, what does 3 and 4 mean? Three means that they are performing at grade level, and 4 is that they're performing even at above grade level. So that was a huge accomplishment for my foster sons. Now, the 5-year-old slash 6-year-old foster son, his final report cards were approaching grade level, which was better than developing proficiency, which was a 1. He went from a 1 to a 2, a 3, 2.5 or 3. So he stayed really well with that. Another thing that they did was, in regards to their improvements, was my 5-year-old foster son was speech impaired, right? He was not able to speak. Well, he met 95% of his IEP goals, right, during that time. And he actually had, by his second ART, he had the 210 minutes of speech therapy dropped to only 90 minutes of speech therapy. And he had reading and math helps that were also removed because he was doing that well. A lot of things I did also was parent involvement. So during this time, I attended their Valentine's Day parties at school. I attended actually my oldest foster son's school performance. He was actually performing in school performances and had solos, which was amazing, right? And also participated in curriculum night at school where you get to meet the teachers and see all the work that they've accomplished throughout the year. And then also volunteered to chaperone my 5-year-old's trip to the Houston Zoo and did that. I was involved. And then also I attended field day for my 5-year-old and participated in that, volunteered. It was very fun, right? I was very involved in their life. I had random visits to the school just to have lunch with them, here and there, just surprise visits, just to let them know that they were special and that I cared for them and that I loved them, right? And so I was also doing my part here to see how the children could improve. And so with that being said, there was a lot of effort and work put into all this improvements that went on. And I'm happy to say that it was very fruitful and that it did pay off, right? And so another thing that I wanted to share was I also assisted them with homework assignments, right? And just really, really involved. I offered comfort and emotional support during their medical visits, right? Because they had to get shots. They had to be in pain. I instantly purchased all kinds of sensory toys that the therapist said that they would need to kind of improve their ability to strengthen their fingers and just everything I couldn't do, right? So I wanted to really bring that to the forefront of kind of what's been going on during all these things that I've been sharing. And it's important to know that, right? Because I was enjoying my time with the children. It was a lot of work indeed, and I was willing to do the work. But at the same time, I did believe and was hopeful that the children would be returned home. And in preparation of the children, and better to prepare them, they were sad because they wanted to go home, but they said they were going to miss me. So that's an easy fix, right? So all I did was say, you'll always have me. I will always be your friend. You can call me anytime. If you ever need anything, I'm more than happy to help you. If you need help or you need money for sports, I'm happy to help your mom. Whatever you need, I will be here for you no matter what, even if you're with your mom. And so that brought a lot of consolation to the children, knowing that I would never leave their life and that I would always be a constant support to them. That was very encouraging to them. Now, I've never been a foster child and I've never been in foster care, but maybe you can speak to some of that, of what I'm speaking, and confirm or verify if these things are even true, right? I did my best to make them feel that it was okay to go home, and because they loved their mother, and absolutely, they were bonding with me. And that's okay to bond with me. I would be their friend forever. And so that brought a lot of comfort to them. So, with that being said, we had some issues with school, right? And the school was having some problems keeping my foster sons safe, which was a concern for me, right? So, when my foster son is calling me from school 9 and 10 times and they can't find him and he's running throughout the entire campus and he's actually left the building, these are concerns, legitimate concerns that I had with the school that they particularly didn't care for. There was one incident where my youngest foster son was coming home and he had holes in his shirt on multiple occasions. So I had to send an email to the teacher asking, okay, so it's been twice in a week that my foster son has come home with holes in his shirt, like somebody cut it with scissors, and holes in his shorts. If you are not able to supervise my foster son with the scissors, please do not give him scissors. So just having to really set these expectations with the school staff that it didn't really go over very well. They didn't like the fact that I was advocating for their safety and wanting some accountability. So another incident was when I picked up my foster sons from daycare, and my 5-year-old foster son was limping very badly. And I asked what happened, and he said he had hurt himself at school. So again, another concern, right? They're not keeping my foster children safe. And that seems to be the narrative, right? I don't know, I'm not a foster child, but that seemed to be something that was really starting to become very obvious to me and apparent, was that the school didn't really emphasize or care too much for the safety of my foster sons. And that was a problem for me because I felt that they deserved to be treated with the same dignity and respect and care as every other student on that campus. And unfortunately, that was not the case. That was not the case. So you can imagine the tension, right, between me wanting to make the school accountable for keeping the children safe, right, and they're not doing a good job of doing that. In one occasion, in April of 2022, I got a phone call from my foster son's elementary school. This is the 5-year-old foster son, who is now 6 years old. He had literally left the entire school grounds, crossed over 4 lanes of road. Mind you, there's a divider of grass in between those 4 lanes on a busy street, and had made it into the neighboring neighborhood. When they called me to tell me that my foster son had left the campus and crossed over that many streets on his own, that was extremely infuriating to me. I was advised by my foster care agency to not bring it up or address it with them because they told me that the school would retaliate and that they would basically compromise placement. So what did I do? Nothing. I did nothing at the recommendation of my foster care agency because, after all, they care about the children. So you can imagine my disappointment. And so these are the things that were going on. In addition, as I've already mentioned, the children were continuing to speak about incidents that had happened previously with their mother, and I didn't know if that was already information that had already been discussed and they were just sharing a history. It didn't matter. I was required by law to report everything that I was hearing that could be emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. I had a duty to do that. That's not an option, right? And so if I didn't do that, and if I didn't report that information, then I run the risk of being a participant or basically being blamed for not sharing that information, right? So either way, I lose. If I shared the information, I lost. If I don't share the information, I lost. Either way, it's a no-win. And so with that being said, I started seeing some additional concerns with the foster care agency. One of the concerns was that I was not comfortable with leaving my foster sons with a particular respite provider that they had arranged for me. And the reason I wasn't comfortable was because when I picked up the phone to introduce myself and just get more information about the respite provider, this respite provider was using profanity. I was very surprised that someone would feel so comfortable. They've never met me before to be using profanity. So that was a little bit of concern for me, because if they're using profanity in front of me as an adult, my only assumption would be that they are going to be using profanity around the children, which I felt a duty to protect the children from being exposed to that type of content, right? It's adult content, it's rated R, right? Language. So when I contacted the foster care agency caseworker, letting her know I had changed my mind, I would not be doing the respite. I literally got berated for not following through with the respite care arrangements. So what does that mean? I got berated. It means that the foster care agency caseworker, that they were very upset with me and they were very frustrated with me and that they didn't want to talk to me right now. And please don't contact me unless you have something to tell me about the children. I'm very upset. Okay. Well, that was another situation where I felt, again, helpless, right? I'm trying to do the right thing, and that's not really making strides. Let's just put it to you that way. So come January 2022, as I mentioned to you, there was a concern about the mentor who had not had completed the approval process. So that had already started some friction. I contacted an attorney, and being that the case was going to be coming to trial, I explained to the attorney, I am interested in adopting the child and these children, and I would like to have some representation. And so the trial was scheduled for February, and I was told by this attorney, I cannot take on this case. There's way too much time that's gone by to try to get up to speed on such a short amount of time. So I was not able to get an attorney to express my wishes in the court about adopting the children in the event that they don't go back home with their mother. So on February 28th, the mother's first day of trial began, and I was subpoenaed by the Department of Family and Protective Services to give my testimony of the condition of the children, basically to give a report, how the children came into my care, all of the outcries that they've been making, etc., etc. Nothing good, right? And so they were relying on my testimony to terminate the mother's rights. So I gave the information that I had according to what I knew, which was how the children came into my care and some of the things that had already been transpiring about reports of outcries of abuse and things like that. And so that was my duty. I had a duty to do that. And so the people, CASA, CPS, the children's therapist, the children's family therapist, they all were not in agreement for the children to return. And I myself gave a testimony stating that I was not in agreement for the simple fact that there was outcries of sexual abuse. And that was my main concern. Neglect and all these things, those things can be remedied, right? People can do better. Sexual abuse is a little different. That's my opinion. So at that point, I also had given my input on that. And then in March was a second day of trial. And I again was asked to give a testimony. Well, let me go back to February. In February of 2022, the Department of Family and Protective Services named me as an adoptive placement in the event that the judge would terminate the mother's rights. So what they wanted to do was to let the judge know, hey, we have a home, safe and stable. And they submitted photos. They submitted photos to the judge saying, look, this is how bonded they are with Miss Hernandez and her family. We had pictures of myself and the children and myself and my family, and they were very bonded. So this is how the department presented the case. And so the judge took that into consideration, that the children would have a placement in the event of a termination. Now, the children's little brothers, the smaller ones, their foster placement was not interested in an adoptive. She was not interested in adopting the children. However, she did have some friends of hers that had been doing respite that were very interested in adopting these children. The problem is that the foster children, the smaller ones, had been very bonded to this foster mother. Very, very bonded. They called her mama. They called her mama from the day that they were there. So that was how they felt about her. And my foster sons did not call me mama. They called me Miss Yvette. And I was happy for that, because I am not their mama, but I would be happy to be Miss Yvette for them and love them just the same. So I just wanted to clear that up too. So in March, there was a second day of trial, and I started noticing that the biological mother's lawyer was attacking me in the hearings, attacking me in terms of, oh, Miss Hernandez, so it's understood that you were late to the appointments. It's understood that the biological mother was saying that I was not treating her well at the visits, and I was not encouraging her children to be affectionate, which is untruthful, right? Because I have video to show. I have text messages and things like that that show I was actually for that relationship. I became a little concerned because I wasn't able to speak. I didn't have an attorney. So this is why I'm trying to tell you, if you're a foster parent, you need an attorney. They will tell you you don't need an attorney because you're not on trial. This is not your trial. This is the biological parent's trial. The problem with that is that I couldn't speak unless somebody asked me a question. And so if the department didn't want to ask me a question, then anything that I had to say to protect or defend myself was not said. And so the biological mother basically slandered me, slandered my character, slandered everything about my relationship with the children, and how I was basically trying to hurt her relationship with her children. That's the testimony. And I didn't get a chance to say anything about that. So no, I didn't get to say a word because the department didn't call me to speak. And so I couldn't speak because I didn't have an attorney. That became a problem. So I already knew that I wasn't going to be able to get an attorney because trial had already started, and attorneys don't want to just drop everything to get up to speed on a case that's over a year old now. And that was unfortunate because at that March hearing, second day, I was not aware of this, but I'm aware of it now. The CPS judge presumed that the mother was saying the truth and that I was hurting the relationship between the children and their mother. And she assigned an amicus attorney, which everybody was kind of surprised. Okay, it's day 2 of trial and you're assigning an amicus attorney to the 2 older foster children after they've had this long relationship with an attorney ad litem, right? Nobody knew why. At least that's what they told me. We don't know why she's doing this. Well, in any case, that was fine with me. I was happy to be helpful and do whatever I needed to do to move the case along and be as helpful as possible, right? That's the plan. So that was in March. And then April comes along and I'm having all these behaviors with the children because they're terrified to go home. They don't know where they're going to be. and they've bonded with me now. They love me. Sometimes they call me mommy. Sometimes they call me Miss Yvette, and this is towards near the end of the placement now. And so there was just a lot of situations that were being created, and a lot of things that were being said behind my back that I didn't know between foster care agency, CASA, attorney ad litem, and CPS. And so what was the narrative? The narrative was, we can't continue this placement, but we don't have any reason to really discharge, right? Because as you just heard the affirming statements, the children were doing amazing in my care. They were not lacking. They were not having issues at my home. They were having issues at school. And that's the thing. They weren't having issues at the park. They weren't having issues at daycare. They weren't having issues at church. They weren't having issues anywhere but school. And so this was creating a lot of friction between the relationship, the working relationship, right, between myself and these very powerful agencies, right? And so then in April, I got a call from the school that my foster son had been using the phone and was very distressed. And I knew that because he had left messages on my voicemail saying, I need your help. I need to know what to do. The teacher is telling me to do this and I don't know what to do. So he was distressed. And the school continued to ignore my requests for additional emotional support. I had asked the school to please provide additional support, emotional support on campus. Okay? And they didn't do it. I told them that they had a crisis response therapist that would come to the school and would be willing to come to the school in an event that the child was distressed. Okay. I let them know this is her phone number. You can call her. She will come. According to the therapist told me that they did not make accommodations for her to come and to assist the child in the way that she was needing those accommodations to be made, according to her request. Okay. Now, the school was telling me that they contacted the therapist and that she didn't want to come. So, as you can see, there is a discrepancy, right? Like this, nobody is agreeing here. Nobody wants to take responsibility for the fact that my foster son needed emotional support and they were unwilling to provide it. So I, of course, wanted to make someone accountable, which was the school, because the incidents were happening at the school. Regardless, the school did not provide the additional emotional support that I requested. They just refused. And that was the end of that. So in in March, the judge became aware that the family therapy sessions had ended. And she wanted those therapy sessions to resume because she was under the impression that the biological mom's statements were true, in that we were not attending, we were not giving her the benefit of the doubt, we weren't giving her the time with the children. So all these attacks were coming against us, right? And we didn't have lawyers to help us or defend us. All we had was the family therapy notes and the family therapist testimony. Thank goodness, right? Well, she ordered the family therapy sessions start again, but without the two younger brothers. Okay, and that was unusual. And so she did that. I said, that's fine. We can do family therapy sessions. I was very committed. I said, whatever you need, whatever, I'll be there. Because at this point, I was already aware that the biological mother was saying that I was late, that I wasn't being kind. I was just a very bad person. And so I wanted to show the judge that I was equally committed to their time with their mother, right? Because they had issues that they needed to talk about with their mother that I assumed would be resolved in family therapy sessions, right? Family therapy is to discuss conflict and resolve it so that you can go back home. And so, despite the fact that I was interested in adopting them, I wasn't interested in adopting them above and beyond their mother. That was only in the event that the rights would be terminated. I want to be clear about that. I loved the children, and there was a bond that we had made, but we also made an agreement that we would be forever friends and I would always be there for them, no matter what. So going home to them was not, they weren't having to choose between, oh, should I go home or should I not? I never made them feel that way. I always encouraged and this relationship between their parents, between their mother. So because of the fact that the children continued to have these allegations, right, of abuse, they scheduled another forensic interview for May. I think it was May, the first week of May, 4th or 5th, another forensic interview. And at that point, the children did much better. They apparently did so good, right, in communicating what was happening or what they had experienced, that they actually now were accusing me of coaching the children. Now I'm being accused of coaching the children in what to say in a therapy session, as if a 6 and 7-year-old could really remember all of that, right? 6 and 7-year-old. But I didn't know what was happening in the therapy sessions. I wasn't in the therapy sessions with the forensic interviewer. I didn't know what. So here's another thing about fostering. You can give a child a voice to the point where they're so confident, people think that they're actually being coached, when all you did was your job. Your job was to give them a voice. And they'd have one, right? That was my goal, was to give them a voice, to use their words for expressing what they need. Not violence, not breaking things, but to use their words. And I'm glad that that was able to be accomplished, right? That's important to me, that they were able to use their words. So the forensic interview happened the first week of May. By this time, the therapist was having sessions with, the children were having sessions with their mom. That started in April. Yay and not so much yay for me, right? Because of the fact that the mother was saying that I wasn't showing up to the visits, the therapy sessions were scheduled for about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And because I worked in Pasadena, one of the children went to school in Friendswood, the other one went to school in League City, and the therapy sessions were literally near Energy Stadium. I needed like a whole day to make sure that I was there on time. So I told my boss, look, the judge has ordered family therapy sessions to begin at this time, and I need the day off because I need to be there in time, right? Because all these allegations about me not being on time is being mentioned. So I gave her a copy of the order so she would see that this was a legitimate reason to not be there every other Friday. Well, with that being said, during this time, from January through April, the children were needing still, they were high needs. There were situations at school, there were emails being sent, phone calls being had, just so much, right, to keep them regulated. That my boss continued to, I noticed that she continued to give me more work, but work with deadlines. And it's interesting because she had always given me excellent reviews. I have them all here. Excellent employee contribution, excellent team player, excellent everything, above and beyond, etc., etc. I have the reviews. But when all these extra things were needing to happen, well, she wasn't happy about the fact that, I was having to invest a little more time and effort into the situations at school that needed to be resolved. And so she started imposing deadlines on my work. Very stringent deadlines that, okay, have all these things done by this particular day at this particular time. So she already knew that the visits in April were going to be every other Friday. So she knew exactly how do I say, assign, right, workloads that I wouldn't be able to finish. It was impossible. I had never had that issue before. So as a result of me going to these visits, there was an assignment that I had to complete, and I didn't complete it. I sent an email saying I didn't get a chance to complete it, and I only had this much left to do, right? So I didn't just leave and not tell anyone. And of course, I started contacting Human Resources, letting them know about my concerns about being given work that I was not able to finish on time, and it was really overwhelming me. and it was something that had been recently starting. So I got HR involved, and I was terminated. I was terminated on so on the 21st was my last day there, and the work that she had requested me to complete was due by the 22nd. It was impossible. I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so that was on 22nd of April, 2022. And so what does that mean exactly? That means that I was so committed to these children that I was willing to even risk my job because I believed that the placement was more important. They had to be stable. I didn't have a choice, right? They had high needs, and I honestly believe that I was performing well at work. The only thing is that work was created to make it look like I was lacking, right? Because you can't really fire somebody for being a foster parent, right? That's not really maybe a good reason. And so I was basically using the policy, the school district policy, to bring my concerns according to what I was supposed to do, which was to contact HR. Because I did that, I got fired. Got fired, and the reason was that she did not complete one assignment, one task, just one task. So they met their goal, and I was fired. And I was looking for work during this time, and of course, that was in April 26th of 2022. Well, I was devastated, and I was hurt because I had always thought of retiring with the school district, and I enjoyed my job working there. On what I was doing was very fruitful. I liked my job. So I had to make a choice, right? I knew that I was facing pressure from all sides, and it was not an easy task to be a foster parent to these children for whatever reason. So I lost my job. And they didn't give me any reason just other than, I didn't finish a task. Insubordination. They call that insubordination. Well, all right, that was a shocker to me. So I applied for unemployment, and I was denied unemployment, right? Because they said it was insubordination. And so unfortunately, I lost my job, but I did not let my foster sons know that because I didn't want them to feel guilty or responsible for what had happened. And I had a good work history to where I had a lot of good experience and I could get a job again. And I informed the foster care agency what had happened, and they were like, well, okay, just as long as you get a job here pretty quickly, that should be okay. I said, okay, good. That was a concern for me, but I had money and savings, so it's not a big deal. I wasn't very stressed because I had money and savings, and I would consider it to be good work experience. Well, during this time in April, while we're taking the children while they're doing their family therapy sessions, the CPS caseworker says, hey, can you let me know how the children are doing? I want an update. So the update was like 2 pages long, right? Because the children were frustrated. They said that their mom wasn't listening to them, that she was trying to avoid them, and they had questions for her that she didn't want to answer, why she did this to them, why she did that to them, etc., etc. And so all I did was report what was reported to me. And by this time, there was a new attorney ad litem, as I said, who was on the case, and she had come to visit the children one time. And she didn't do very well with them, actually. My oldest foster son, I think she did well with, but when she interviewed my second foster son, the younger one, like within 5 minutes, she triggered him and he was crying. So I don't know what she said, but apparently it had something to do with Pennywise. Okay, Pennywise, some kind of a scary character from a horror show. I don't know what was said. It upset my foster son so much that he was crying, so I had to comfort him. During that visit, I tried to make more time and invited her for lunch so that she could spend more time and see if she can get another chance at talking to my foster son. And so she did. she got a little bit more chance to be around us and how they were bonded to me. And just how they were. They were fine. No medications, They enjoyed being with me. So she's up trying to get up to speed on the case, right? And I'm sending her an email saying, look, CPS told me that I need to let you know that these are things that are happening in therapy sessions. Is there any way that you can tell the judge? Because apparently the children are upset now and they don't want to do the therapy sessions. They're upset. Well, she said, I can't do anything right now. I'm still trying to get up to speed on the case. So basically, just keep going with the therapy sessions. Fine. But I will say that that was not positively impacting the children. That was not working. And so, so we continued to go. And I contacted the foster care agency worker and I said, look, I just drove into the parking lot. My foster son is complaining. I don't know what to do. So now she's like, just do your best. Okay, so I said, well, look, maybe if I can record him saying it, then I can, without him knowing, then I can give it to somebody and they can understand that, well, how he is feeling. So I put the recording on and thankfully, he didn't mention anything about his mom. Didn't say anything about it, which was great. I didn't think it was great at the time because I was thinking they're going to think that I'm saying this and it's not coming from them. That's what I was thinking. But in the event, it wound up turning out to be for my benefit because they just talked about other things, right? We were there in the parking lot waiting for the time to be 3 o'clock. Again, because there was contention between the biological mother and me, and she was saying things about me in court that were not true. So I just wanted to avoid it altogether. I just waited in the parking lot until it was almost exactly that time so I wouldn't run into her, right? And so that's important to say because when the visit started, this family therapy session started, I contacted the therapist letting her know, look, this is who I am. This is my name. These are the 2 foster children in my care. And I would like to know if there's any way that you can make accommodations to where I don't have to run into the biological mom, right? And I explained because things were being said about me in court that were not true. So it'd be better if we just didn't interact and things like that. And so she said, well, I don't have a very big waiting room. You'll have to wait outside in the hallway. And so I was like, okay. Or you can wait in your car. So that was the solution to my request. And that was fine. Like as long as I didn't run into her and we didn't have any interactions, then I could protect myself from any further testimony about things that were being slandered. My name was being slandered, right? Slander is something that somebody says about you that's not true. And so that's slander. And so that's what was happening in the trial. So that was the only thing I said to her. My conversation was less than 2 minutes long with the therapist. Now, it's important to understand that because what happened was this. On May 6th, my oldest foster son, apparently after the session reported to me that the family therapist did some behaviors that were inappropriate. And he did no longer feel safe having sessions with her because he was afraid he was going to be in trouble. Now, the inappropriateness of what he reported was that he had mentioned an incident that happened between him and his mother that was maybe more sexualized, and that she told him that he could take his little lies somewhere else. Now, that's what he reported to me. And he also reported to me that my name was being mentioned in the therapy sessions quite often. As in, did Miss Yvette tell you to say this? Did Miss Yvette tell you to say that? Did Mrs. Yvette tell you to say this? And so that was very interesting to me because the therapy sessions, to my understanding, was for the therapist to hear the child, to discuss the concerns with the child and the parent, and resolve them so that they can move forward. Not to bring me into their therapy sessions, right? So I sent a text message to the new CPS caseworker who had just got assigned to the case in May 2022. I had never seen her, never talked to her. She never visited my home. Just that, hey, I'm the new caseworker. Call me if you need anything, etc. Okay. Well, I sent a text message to her to the CASA supervisor, the CASA volunteer worker, the attorney ad litem, and the amicus attorney, I believe, and possibly the foster care agency caseworker, explaining that my foster son had just completed a session and all these things were said to him, and he was very upset, and he did not want to continue these therapy sessions with this therapist. Mind you, the therapist is a contracted therapist with DFPS. Okay? And they said, well, did he say that, or did somebody say that? And I said in my text message, I encourage someone to pick up the phone and call him and get more information, basically, while it's still fresh on his mind. I encourage that because I wasn't in the session. I don't know. So they were very concerned about the fact that this report had come through about the therapist. And again, I don't know if it was true. I was reporting, again, something that it's my duty to report. Emotional abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse. In this point, my foster son had expressed emotional distress from this family therapy session. Well, nobody called. Nobody called my foster son to ask, okay, what happened? Give us the information. Nobody. So that's fine. I did my part and I made the report. A week later, on May 13th, I followed up with the CASA worker, the CASA volunteer, and I said, has anybody followed up with the therapist to see what's going on? My foster son's going to be having a session. I just wanted to know, like, has anything been resolved, basically? What's the status? So the CASA volunteer said, oh, the CPS caseworker is following up on that, so you might want to check with her. So I did. I followed up with the CPS caseworker and saying, okay, again, I'm just following up to see what the status is on what was reported last week. Has anybody had a chance to talk to the therapist? What's the update, right? Because he was distressed. Well, I'm trying to get a hold of her, or I'll be talking to her soon. I'll let you know whatever she finds out. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted an update. That was on May 13th. On May 16th, I get a phone call from the foster care agency. And it's nothing to do with any solutions about the family therapy sessions and the therapist. Instead, it's something to do with me. And it was about the fact that there are concerns that I was coaching the children in what to say in their sessions, and that I would no longer be allowed to transport the children to their sessions with their biological mother. Well, again, another slander, right? There's people making statements about me that they can't prove. They can assume what they want to. So, of course, I was very disappointed that instead of investigating the therapist, I was now the person who was being investigated for coaching. So that was on a Monday or Tuesday. And the therapy session was going to be on that Friday. So they had told me, we're going to have to find someone else to transport. And I said, that's fine. Actually, that's better for me. I want to remove myself from that situation because I know it's not true. As a matter of fact, I called the foster care agency back and I said, as a matter of fact, let's do one better. I would like to put the children in respite care for the remainder of the week, so that way there will be no attachment to me, and I will not be anywhere near the children, not the day of, not the morning of, not the day before, to where they can say, I'm coaching, because that's ridiculous. I don't even know what was being said. And so they put the children in foster and respite care. They were devastated, traumatized. I had to do it because I had to prove that the allegations were not true, and that I was committed to making sure that I was not going to be a hindrance to this therapy sessions. Well, my foster sons didn't do well that week. I was getting reports from the teachers, they're not doing well, they're not eating. Respite care was telling me they're not eating, they're just not eating. they're having behaviors, they're not doing well. And that hurt me very much. That hurt me so much. What hurt me the most is that I had already signed up for field day, okay, to be there for my oldest foster son. And what hurt me the most was that my foster son actually told me when he came back into my care that weekend, Miss Yvette, you didn't come to my field day. And I was looking at the table with your name on it, and you never came. And he said that he asked the teacher, well, can I at least get her name tag and take it with me? And that hurt so much. Because I had never disappointed him. To that point, I had never disappointed him. I had always been a person of my word. But as you know, as a foster parent, you can't tell the children, somebody's accusing me of lying, somebody's accusing me of this, I've got to do that. That's just not what you do with foster children, right? In case you're a foster child or you've been in foster care, that's not what you do. And that's not what I did. I told them that I had an appointment that I had to go to. It was very important. And that wasn't true. I wasn't there for him. And I hurt him. But I was determined to prove that allegations were untrue. There's no way I would do that. There just would be no way. And then I picked him up from respite on Sunday, and of course they were so glad and sad. Sad because they had been gone for so many days, maybe 5, and they missed me so much, and I missed them so much too. So fast forward to trial day 3. Trial day 3, May 23rd. May 23rd, I was not invited by the department to give any testimony or to be attending the hearing. The hearings were done by virtual, by Zoom. So they put the family therapist on the stand. And so the family therapist starts making testimonies about me that were untruthful. She testified that I called her before the family therapy sessions had ever started with the bio mom. She testified that I had told her that the children were afraid of their mother. They did not want to have visits with her. She testified that I was basically trying to convince her of basically influencing her opinion about the biological mom prior to even meeting the mother. She testified that she believed that the children could have been coached because of how they behaved in their therapy sessions. She said that the children said, Miss Yvette said this, Miss Yvette said that, Miss Yvette said this, right? Well, that would be probably not true. I don't really know. Because those things you don't really know. Nobody's really there to hear or record. And so while she was testifying, I text messaged the CASA volunteer saying, the therapist is not being truthful. She is not telling the truth. Okay? And I also text messaged the attorney ad litem, right? The amicus attorney, informing her that the therapist was not being truthful in this testimony and that she's not telling the truth. And so while she continued to basically slander me, it became very clear to the judge without me being there that the question was asked, do you believe that Ms. Hernandez. Well, the question was asked by the biological mother's lawyer, that if she believed that I was alienating the children from their mother, that relationship, which was absurd, right? Because I have proof, photos, text messages to people, just encouraging and, things about their relationship with their mother and their father, allowing them to express their heart for their father. And so she slandered me, and I asked the CASA worker what happened, because apparently they were having conversations about some outcries of abuse that were being said in the session, so they had to take the Zoom off. Everything went off YouTube. And I asked the CASA worker, like, well, what happened? I mean, what happened? What happened with the case? And she said, well, the judge is needing more time to make a decision, because she takes terminating the parental rights very seriously. And in my text message, I said, well, I agree. That's good, because that is a serious thing. So I was actually in agreement with the judge that, yeah, that's really important. So on May 24th, I get a text message from foster care agency saying, hey, we need you to come in today at a certain time. I'm like, we have something we want to talk about. I'm like, well, what is it about? Well, we'd rather wait for you to get here, and we'll talk about it then. So I said, okay. My text message, yeah, we'll be there. So we arrived, me and my 2 foster sons, to this foster care agency. And the therapist was there, the children's therapist, the foster care agency caseworker, and another therapist that was involved in, like, she's like a family therapist, but she's more like, she does in-home visits to see how the children and the foster family are bonding, or what's the family dynamic. She had been assigned to us. So we're sitting there. My foster son is to the right, and my other foster son is to my left. And they just said, the judge has decided to remove the children from your home. At which point, I was confused and shocked. But my foster sons were screaming and yelling and crying. And my oldest foster son made I guess a suicide ideation out loud. He threatened to run into the road so that he could get hit by a car and die. And the other one was unconsolable, grieving like someone had died. And all 3 of them are just there, just looking with just a stone cold face. No emotion, nothing. I watched these children suffer, and I did my best to comfort them. I sang them songs. My oldest foster son was using curse words. He was saying that the judge made a mistake. That's a mistake. And I tried to comfort them and say that's we don't really know what's happening. And they said they didn't know why the judge had made that decision, right? The CPS judge, because she was making it in their best interest, right? This was their best interest. And to see them so devastated is terrible. I was helpless. How could I help them? The judge just made a decision, and I don't even know why. Nobody knows why. Nobody told me why. And that was so devastating, that they had to call a psychiatric crisis place, Gulf Coast. And because they literally thought that my older foster son needed to be in a psychiatric hospital. He was so devastated. And so they did the person called and did a virtual visit with my foster son and asked some questions. Who do you feel safe with? Who can you go to when you don't feel safe? And he named me and some other person. Who at school can you go to and talk to when you don't feel safe? And he named a little girl that he had made friends with, and he named me. What gives you reason to live? And he said, Miss Yvette is the reason that he lives. And so a safety plan was put in place. And basically I had to sleep by the door so that he wouldn't basically accomplish his threat, which was to run into the road and die. And I, of course, didn't share any tears or any emotion at the time because I didn't want to traumatize them even further. They were already very traumatized. So I used my TBRI skills, and I used the techniques that I had been shown to continue to keep their schedule consistent and regular, and just keep the schedule. They went to school. I did everything normal, like nothing had changed. They never saw me cry. And they would say, is this the day that we have to leave? Is this the day we have to leave? And I was just trying to redirect them, and we did other things, like we went swimming, and I didn't really let them see how much it hurt me, but it did. So the foster care agency contacted me, and they said, well, today's Friday, and you need to drop these children off at this respite place until the new foster family is able to take them. All right, so for you foster families out there who think you're doing an amazing job, which I'm sure you do think so, these foster sons were taken out of my home for no reason. There was no evidence supporting these testimonies against me, and also I did not even get a chance to defend myself in court. I was guilty of every slanderous thing that was said about me without due process. So what does that mean? I'll tell you what that means. It means that I had to pay a $15,000 retainer to get a lawyer to intervene in this case because I wanted these children back in my home, and the judge had made a very bad mistake. I dropped them off on the 27th, and they were just so devastated, so hurt, so sad, and I couldn't do anything about it. Nothing. And I think it's important for you to see that. This is my story. And so I dropped them off. And that very same day, I signed up a retainer. I got an attorney, and I gave the $15,000 that I didn't have. Right. Thinking that, well, they'll be back. They'll be back. The judge made a mistake. So in the meantime, every single day from May 27th to 2022, all the way to January 10th, 2024, I've done everything in my power, everything that I know, to get these children back. What does that look like? I'll tell you. So I got the lawyer, and the lawyer said, look, We're already going to go into 4th day of trial. The case is over a year long. The judge is not going to allow you to intervene in this case because it will complicate the issues and it will further extend the amount of time that this case gets resolved. We do not recommend you intervening at this point. The judge is just going to shut you down, and she's not going to change her decision. And that was the advice I was given. Instead, they said, we recommend that you wait to see what happens with the mother's rights, and if they're terminated, you can file your petition for adoption. As long as it's within 90 days of the day that the children were removed, you can file your petition for adoption. So I did that. And on July 28th, 2022, without my help, without my interference, and without my involvement, the mother's rights were terminated anyway. And and then the law firm that I was with submitted the petition for adoption, August 19th, 2022. But by this time, they were in a foster placement. Temporary, right? It was a temporary foster placement. The mother appealed the decision, and she wanted to keep going. And that's fine. You know, I feel that people have the right to appeal. And they have the right to due process. So that was okay. I just wanted the children to be back placed in my home so that they can continue the progress that they had made. They could continue to do well. Well, August 19th, I filed a petition for adoption, and it gets served on Department of Family and Protective Services. They are aware. August 2022, they are aware that the placement that had them for 18 months and where they were thriving and had already named me as an adoptive placement was now interested in adopting the children. And why is that important to bring that up? It's important to bring that up because you'll always see articles about the caseworkers are so overworked. Caseworkers are having to work so much overtime because they just can't find an adoptive placement. So let me just debunk that right now. I'm proof, living proof, that they were aware and served with a petition for adoption. They had actually named me as adoptive placement 2 days out of those days of trial, and they had no concerns about these children being in my home at all. Now, that was in August. And in August through September, I ran out of money, right? So the lawyer said, well, we're gonna withdraw from the case. You know, it's gonna be a while. It's not gonna nothing's gonna happen anytime soon. And I was thinking, but can't we get the children back? And no, you have to wait for the whole process to be done, the whole entire mother's appeal. So I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have a lawyer for from the end of September to like October, sometime in October. So what happened? What happened in September was this. The judge signed an order, entered the order terminating the mother's rights. Right? That hadn't been done yet. It had not been an order entered until like September 26th or something like that. Well, as soon as I saw that come through, I immediately contacted the foster care agency saying, hey, the order just came through. Can you please let the CPS caseworker know that I'm interested in the children being placed back in my home? How can we do that? What needs to be done, right? So that we can get them back in my home and where they belong, right? Where there was consistency and a bond. Well, she said, I just talked to the caseworker and she said that she can't actually place the children back in your home. The judge has to do that because the judge is the one who removed them from your home. So you need to get a lawyer to intervene. That's the recommendation, right? In the email from the foster care agency that they gave me. Well, during this time, I already had my petition for adoption on file, so I was actually trying to move my own adoption case along as a pro se petitioner. So I was engaging with conversations with the attorney ad litem, right? My foster sons ad litem, saying, hey, look, I know that the mom's rights have been terminated now. There's been an order that's been submitted. How can we get the children placed back in my home? Oh, no, she said. We don't want to disrupt the placement. The mother's case is on appeal, and we just want to wait for that de novo to be done before we move the children. It's not a good idea. Okay. It's not a good idea. We want to keep the status quo, she said. All right. So then I also had emailed the CASA supervisor for Hays County, and I explained to her, look, I said the same thing, how can we get the children placed back in my home? Can we have some discussions about pretrial hearing matters for the adoption? So all these things, right? And her response was, we don't want to have any conversations about adoption right now, okay? The mother's de novo is going through. She hasn't gone through that yet. And it's too early to talk about adoptive placements, okay? And we don't want to move the children right now. That was in September, early October 2022. So this foster care agency says, get a lawyer and intervene. Attorney ad litem says, we're waiting just to see. We don't want to move the children. We just want to leave them where they are. We don't want to disrupt. Status quo. CASA says same thing. Let's not talk about anything about adoption right now. Let's just wait. Okay. Well, during that time, I was getting a lot of respite requests from the foster care agency saying, hey, can you watch these kids, or can you watch these kids or that kid, or this child? No, I can't. So finally I said yes. In October I said yes. It was the end of September. It was gonna be the early October. So I took a respite placement of 2 little boys that required psychotropic medication. And that's fine. I'm okay with giving medication. Contrary to what CPS says, right? CPS says I don't believe in giving medication. They slandered me again. But yet for the entire time that my foster children were with me, I gave medication. I've got medication logs. But now they're claiming and slandering me about issues with medication, right? They don't know what else to say. So I took on this respite placement, and I noticed that they had asked me to go into my portal and sign that that you provided respite care for these 2 children. So when I go into my portal, I see that there's the 2 respite children that I provided care for, and then my 2 foster sons attached to my portal. And I noticed that when I clicked there, I had found out some information that they weren't doing so well. I was informed through that my foster son had needed a psychiatric appointment in September, that he was wanting to see me, and that he was now on psychotropic medication for anger. Well, that was a devastation to me. And then they had all these behaviors, check. It was like a bunch more behaviors that they were having that were worse. So, of course I was devastated, but long story short, I took a screenshot of my portal, and I sent an email to the caseworker saying, I wanted to let you know that I had some questions about some of the things that I'm noticing in my portal, regards to some signatures that you're needing that didn't happen, like some events that you're wanting me to sign for that didn't happen. And then also question about capacity for my home. Would you consider me increasing my capacity for my home for more children? And then also just wanted to let you know my 2 foster sons are attached to my portal. I wanted to let you know I could see them on my portal. So she responded to me saying, oh, okay, well, I've already removed them, so you shouldn't be able to see them anymore. That was in October 2022. And it's important for me to say this because you're going to see what happened later. And that was in October. So October goes by and I get a lawyer. I find a lawyer in Hays County that's willing to take my case, my adoption case, and I give him all the information about kind of what's going on and how I want to get the children placed back in my home. So he says, absolutely, you know, we can do this. We'll file this, we'll file that, we'll file this, all kinds of legal documents, right? So in November, I think it was around November 15th, thereabout, my lawyer files an intervention. An intervention to intervene in the case, a consolidation, and then also a referral. And the request for referral was asking the court to move the CPS case out of CPS court into a district court. Now, why is that a problem? What happens is, whatever CPS says, the judge just rubber stamps it. There's really no judicial process. As you can see with me, the judge didn't even give me an opportunity to even refute what was said about me. I didn't even get the benefit. Somebody just was able to just say whatever they wanted to say about me, and automatically it was true. And unfortunately, I don't know what else was said about me, right? So whatever it wasn't probably good in the judge's eyes, right? But now that you can hear my testimony, now that you'll know what led up to this testimony was the fact that I actually reported the family therapist for actually some questionable behavior towards my foster son. But CPS didn't tell you that. They didn't tell you that part. This is what I'm saying about CPS. They didn't tell the judge there's some concerns that the family therapist is not treating the child well. They didn't tell you those things, did they? And they won't. But they let you believe what you want to believe, and they'll give you information about what they want you to know so that it can go towards whatever they want. No, they weren't upfront and saying, well, look, there's all kinds of issues going on right now. We need more time. So in November, I get an email from my attorney saying there's going to be a permanency planning meeting by the CPS caseworker. And it says a permanency planning meeting. So I didn't know what that was. But all I knew is that because we were interveners in the case, that we would be able to have a seat at the table. So I thought, and so did my lawyer. Well, we get the link to the Teams meeting, okay, and I click there, and it says, you know, the host is waiting for you to let you in. Denied. I was denied. I tried again, denied a second time. I tried again a third time. I probably tried to log in 5 times, and every single time I was denied access. My lawyer actually had a communication email with that CPS caseworker, right, in November, informing her that, you know, we should be a part of this process. We're interveners in the case. So she said, no, you're not allowed to be in the meeting. You're not considered. We haven't considered her for an adoptive placement. This meeting is only for adoptive parents and current caregivers. Okay. Well, so basically what they said in their email was that you're not allowed. You're not going to be a part of this meeting. And so they blocked me. They blocked me from having any involvement, and I was excluded from being considered some type of permanency for these children. They blocked me. Okay, taxpayer dollars are being used because they can't find adoptive placements. But here's a person who literally blocked me, and I spent thousands of dollars. I had to give this lawyer a large amount of retainer. Okay, more money, right, to pursue this intervention that they told me I had to do. Well, anyway, they blocked me. And so what happened? What happened was that during that meeting, we were advised that CASA supervisor, attorney ad litems, were not in agreement for me to be in this meeting. The same CASA people that sent all those nice compliments to me, affirming statements about me, now supposedly did not want me to participate in this meeting. Why? Nobody knew. And by the way, 8 days later, the children were moved into an adoptive placement. 8 days later, November the 28th, 2022, no longer was the mother's de novo an issue about, let's not talk about adoptive placement right now. Okay? No. That was actually fine now. They could actually be moved into an adoptive placement. Those of you who are so excited to get those foster placements that come in to your home, are you aware? Did they tell you that there was already a petition for adoption by somebody who had already successfully cared for these children for 18 months, by somebody who had been named the adoptive placement by CPS 2 days out of the trial, that they had bonded? Did they tell you that when they brought them into your home? They didn't probably tell you that. Here I am trying to get these children back while CPS is literally blocking me from trying to get them back to a place where they felt safe and loved. So, those of you who just put your little cute little posts out there, today we got a placement. How exciting. Are you excited? Are you excited to know that there was actually, that these children were actually removed without a good reason and were perfectly doing well? And now they need medication because now they're with you and you don't understand where these behaviors are coming from? They'll tell you it's because of their bio mom. It's because of their bio mom. They're not going to tell you it's because there's another foster parent who had already had them for 18 months. We named them as the adoptive placement, and we decided that we just didn't want her anymore. We just picked somebody else. How many of those placements do you think you've had? Who's going to tell you? Who's going to tell you that? You think Casa's going to say, yeah, there was another lady who was really great and she did a great job with them, but we just don't want her. We just want them to be with somebody else now. Do they tell you that? Because that's what happened. What about the attorney ad litems? Do they tell you that? Did they tell you how great they did? No. No. Because they don't care about the children. They care about what they want. And here you are, and here I was, as a foster placement, opening my home up so that CPS, CLASA, and attorney ad litems can continue to do this to people. Hurt them and use their power and influence to weaponize other people who have bonded and have made progress with these children. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that. So what happened then? And then we scheduled a hearing. November came and went. They were gone. They were moved. They moved them. The mother's de novo hasn't even been heard yet. Hasn't even been scheduled. But it got scheduled for February 2023. Finally, after, let me see, July 28th, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. Almost 7 months later from the time that they terminated the mother's rights, she got her de novo hearing. That's unjust. So what happened? Let's keep going. November comes along and it's gone. And there we are trying to get our hearing set. We scheduled our hearing for January. And guess who objected? My foster son's attorney, the attorney ad litem. She actually objected to me wanting to be with my foster children after she knew and witnessed the bond that we had. What changed? What changed? So who else objected? CPS objected. Oh, they no longer were in favor of me having even an opportunity to even have a chance to say something in court about how I wanted the children placed back in my home, right? They objected because my case was in family court, not CPS court. So the family judge granted my hearing. And the day of the hearing, they showed up and they had filed an objection the day before, telling the judge that they didn't have enough time to look at the pleading, that they needed more time. They were just trying to stall. We updated their concerns, which was she's only wanting 2 of the children. She only wants 2 of the 4 children. Well, actually, I wanted all 4 of the children, and I wanted them in September. But I didn't have a lawyer at the time to communicate that. So when I got my new lawyer, he had asked me, are you wanting just 2 children or all 4? And I said, I want all 4. I want them to be together. I want them to have their family. So we updated and amended our pleading, our adoption, to include the other two brothers. Now, who wouldn't want four little brothers placed together in a home that was already proven to provide a safe and loving environment where they were thriving? Thriving. Who wouldn't want that? Why would CPS not want that? Was there actually some legitimate concern as far as safety, well-being? No, they can just not like you, and that's it. And this is going to the foster children out there and people who have been in foster care. If they don't like you, they'll just turn your whole world upside down, and you're the ones who have to bear the brunt of it all. You might think people abandoned you, but that's not the case at all. They're not going to go and tell you, we don't like Miss Yvette, so we're going to go ahead and just put you somewhere else, okay? Of course that's not okay. For 18 months it was okay for you to be with me, but now it's not okay. That makes no sense. So what happened? Well, we were successful on January the 10th, 2023. We finally got my hearing. And the family judge said, okay, I cannot consolidate this case. I'm not going to consolidate the case, and I'm not going to hear your motion to strike. They actually filed a motion to strike my intervention. They didn't want me in the case. Why not? CPS, caseworker, who only knew me 3 weeks. Okay, never met me once. All right. So she didn't want me. She didn't pick me. So what happened? Let me tell you what happened on January 11th and 12th and 13th. We made so much success in our case. Well, I felt it was a success because the family judge said, I'm going to refer the consolidation and the referral to the CPS judge so she can just resolve that issue. And I'm going to refer the intervention and the motion to strike with the district judge. That's fine. So what happened on the 12th? What happened on the 12th of January was the CPS judge referred my case and the case involving these children to district judge. That means that she didn't want to have anything to do with it. She just gave everything to the district judge. Well, that's good for I would think, people who would feel that they would get justice. The CPS was not happy about that. And this is how they expressed their discontent with that decision. On the evening of January the 12th, I received a phone call from my foster son's therapist. She's employed with the foster care agency. Not from my caseworker, not from anybody else, but his therapists. Leaving me a message saying, there's a concern that we got, so we need to have a meeting. So I was like, a concern? Okay, I haven't had any kids in my home since May of 2022. And now there's a concern. Maybe 7 months later. What's this concern about? So I called her back on the morning of the 13th of January, Friday the 13th. And I explained to her, I have an attorney now, so if you have something that you want to say, I would like my lawyer to be present. Absolutely. And I said, I'll have to get with my lawyer to get some time to see when we can coordinate a time we can meet about your concern. She said, that's fine. That's fine. That was in the morning on Friday the 13th. What happened at noon? Out of nowhere, a child care licensing worker shows up at my door, knocking on my door. She's here for an unannounced inspection of my home and an investigation. Wow. An investigation about what? I don't have any children in my home. I haven't had any children in my home for 7 months. Well, she said, I'm doing an unannounced visit just to see how, making sure that the home is still in good order and things like that. And that's fine. So I said, in regard to the investigation, I'll have to call my attorney, and he'll have to be present if you're going to be doing an investigation. Well, she said, I'm only here to talk about a medical appointment. I said, I haven't had any children here since May. No one's brought that up to my attention until now. Well, someone submitted a concern. Okay. 7 months later? I never heard the concern, but I'm happy to speak with you about it once my lawyers are present. She said, it's not that big a deal. I'm just not going to do the investigation. I just wanted to let you know that I did speak with the boys that were in your care, and they very much liked living here, is what she told me. They very much liked living here. Oh, I said, well, I'm glad to hear that. because I'm trying to adopt them and their two brothers. So that's good to hear. So it was a surprise to her because she didn't know that I was trying to adopt these four brothers. I don't know why, but she didn't know. It hadn't been brought to her attention. So she left, and I asked her, can you please tell me how I can get a copy of the report and the status of what the outcome is? And she said, yes, I'm going to send you the information, which she did. I had to contact the foster care agency to ask for the report, and they emailed it to me around 3 o'clock or so. Well, what happened at 4:50 p.m. on January 13th? I received an email saying, we are closing your home. This is from the foster care agency, due to concerns of client confidentiality violations. Okay, you're closing my home due to client confidentiality violations. But they didn't say what that was. They just said, we're closing your home. By this time, I kind of felt already that there was already some friction between the agencies, right? The agency, the CASA, the Alitem. By this time, the picture's starting to look a little clearer as to who is really for me and who's really not for me at this point. So they don't want me there, and that's fine. I'm not going to entertain or engage in, well, what did I do? And what did I do? And it's more slander, right? Another slanderous comment. We have information that says that you violated client confidentiality, but they never produced that. So that's fine. So I went and I applied in another agency to get my adoption license because my goal was to adopt. And the reason I got my adoption license was because I wanted the judge to know that I was fully committed to the safety and well-being of the children, and that I was willing to keep my home up to standards, up to the state standards. And I did that. So I applied, and this agency was very enthusiastic, right? I had TBRI training, and so I could take specialized needs children, but my goal was already to adopt the four children, not to adopt any other children. The purpose of that adoption certification was to just have one when I had my hearing before the judge. So she gets the transfer paperwork, and she says, I'm sorry, well, we can't continue with the certification. And I said, why not? Well, there's some things in the paperwork that we received from the agency that says that they don't recommend you for future placement. Okay, what does that mean? I mean, based on what? Well, they claim that you violated client confidentiality and that they don't recommend you for future placement. They also stated that the children were removed by CPS. And I said, well, that's not true. The children were removed by a judge, a court-ordered judge, based on some allegations that were said about me at a hearing that I did not attend. Well, we cannot continue to move forward. So I said, all right then. So I didn't get licensed there. So then February comes along, and the mother's de novo is set for a hearing. So my attorney and I show up to the de novo, and we're there observing. We're not a party to the case. We agreed to not intervene. My attorney, he drew up a Rule 11 saying that we will wait for our hearing until after the de novo is heard by the judge. We wanted to give the mother her time and her opportunity to share what she needed to share. Well, unbeknownst to me, I'm sitting in the audience there, and they tell the judge that they believe that somebody is there that they want to testify. That would be me. The very department that doesn't want me to have the children is now asking me to testify on their behalf to continue to terminate the mother's rights. Okay. And of course, my lawyer had already informed me that it's possible I may have to testify if they ask me to. Well, I wasn't hoping that they would, because they had already done so much to me by closing my home and objecting to my intervention, that I didn't think that they would really have the gumption to really ask me to give a testimony on their behalf to terminate the mother's rights. But they did. So I did. I went up into and gave a testimony of the information that they asked me about, and I was very respectful, despite the fact that they were very contentious towards me. So that was in February. Okay. So in February, The judge heard the information. She made a decision to terminate the mother's rights again. That was the district judge. So in the meantime, my attorney and I are still trying to get a hearing on what we want the judge to hear, which is placement. Like, I want them back in my home. And so in March, there was a permanency hearing that we attended. And at that hearing, we objected to everything that was submitted to the court by the CASA and the CPS caseworker. The reports were fraudulent. But we didn't say they were fraudulent. We just said we objected. We wanted to present our case later. So the judge said, okay, well, that was in March. And at that point, the judge agreed to go ahead and schedule a hearing for me. She said, you can have 4 hours. Tell my coordinator that I'm giving you permission to have 4 hours on the calendar. And at that point, everybody was very cooperative. The CPS lawyer, the attorney ad litem, and the CASA. Oh, yes, Judge. Oh, of course. Let's agree on a date right now. What about April the 21st? Yes, Judge, right away. So, yes, they were so cooperative that they were just telling the judge, we're on board, yes. We'll give her 4 hours, right? So she can bring her hearing to get these children placed back in my home. So April 18th comes around, and I get an email from my lawyer. And it's from the court saying that the judge has canceled my hearing. She canceled my hearing that was on the 21st because she had a special setting and something that had more important come up. Well, then we said, all right, let's see how we can get another hearing going then. We need to coordinate a time so that we can get Ms. Hernandez, right, a hearing. By this time, my foster sons are already in their placement, almost 6 months, right? So the time is getting close to where they can actually have the right to actually submit their petition for adoption as well, right? And that's the idea, right? Make the time, extend the time further and further away so that other people have an opportunity to also be able to adopt these children, right? Because they didn't have a reason to withhold consent. Up until this point, all these objections that they have to give the judge a reason, a good reason to withhold consent for an adoption to not go through if they don't agree. They don't have one. They named me as the adoptive placement. So their only strategy left was to keep them in this foster home for as long as possible and not allow me to get my hearing, to where now they don't need a reason. Now it's just another family wanting to adopt them. So that was their strategy. So that was April 18th. So what happened April 18th all the way through May? Apparently, attorney ad litem, CASAs, and CPS, they just couldn't coordinate. Oh, that day doesn't work for me. Well, that day works for me. Well, this day doesn't work for me. So the rules is that you can set a hearing with 2-week notice, right? If it's not agreed upon, the rules are that a person can set a hearing and then be heard. However, the court coordinator or the person in charge of setting the hearing refused to allow us to set our hearing unless CPS agreed, unless everyone agreed. So I didn't get my hearing. May came along and I didn't get my hearing. I had to actually use more funds from my lawyer to ask for a special hearing, to ask the judge to give me a hearing. It's called a special setting. That special setting was actually finally put on the calendar for the judge in July. So by this time, the mother has already appealed. Her case is already in the Court of Appeals, right? That's her third chance. And we show up to the special setting, and they did too, of course. And the judge allowed me to have my hearing in August, sometime in August, I believe, or July. It might have been July. She let me have my hearing. And in July, my lawyer explained to her that we were trying to set a hearing for placement, etc., etc. And everybody said, Your Honor, that's not a good idea to move the children. The mother's de novo is in the process. It's not good to move the children while the mother's de novo hasn't even been decided. But what the judge didn't know was that they had already moved the children into an adoptive placement while the mother was already awaiting her de novo in November. Okay, so not very transparent, very deceptive. But at this point, I don't really think it matters now that I've had my experience in Hays County, because judicial process is not really very high on the priority list. So at that point, the judge had said, I'm not going to hear your hearing. I'm not going to give you a hearing, is what she told me, until we get a result back from the Court of Appeals. That was in July. She made it very clear that she was not going to entertain anything. And so that was a discouragement to me. That was sad for me, because that's just more time, the way that the children are spending. More and more time is being spent apart from each other. And, well, that was very hard for me, because I had worked and paid so much money to my lawyer to get to that even one hearing. And that was in July. And then in August, we had to show up because they had another permanency hearing. And so we showed up to that. And again, we looked at the reports, and again, more false information. Not truthful. I don't even know if the judge reads these, okay? But if she read them all, she would see that they don't even, they're not consistent. Okay, they're not consistent. They don't even agree with each other. CASA's reports don't agree with CPS's reports. CPS's reports don't agree with medical records or school records. So it's just unfortunate. So that was in August. We went to the hearing and again made our objections known. And I mean, the final order is so poorly documented and drafted that it actually has 3 out of the 4 siblings being placed with a relative and the 4th sibling being adopted. Huh? Who? This is a person who's claimed to has a master's degree, and submitting sloppy paperwork like this to the judge it's nauseating. Okay, these are people's lives. The information needs to be accurate. And you know what you did was wrong. And you know what you did was to make it look like the children were in a safe and stable home when they had been already moved and been to like 4 or 5 different schools. And in your report, you put that they had only been to 2 schools. So you lied. Okay? You lied. And you lied because you wanted the judge to believe that they had stability when they weren't. You lied when you didn't even tell the judge that my foster son was on psychotropic medication in your report. You lied. That's a pretty good, important piece of information there. But the CASA didn't lie, at least not on that. The CASA lied about other things, but not about that. So just so you know, if you're an attorney in Hays County, read the CASA reports, read the CPS reports, and you'll see that they don't align. And another thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the amount of placements or the placements that they say the children have been are actually the correct, because they're not. And actually how many moves that they've had. How many different schools have they been to? Because a lot of the times in every single one of those reports, the amount of schools that they had on their form was only 2. 2. Well, that's funny, because I counted 4 or 5. So you lied. You're lying on your reports. But it doesn't matter, and you know it doesn't matter, because you know you're not going to be held to standard, because you know as well as I know that ombudsman and everybody else is on your side, because they're not going to do a thing about it. Lying is perfectly okay in Hays County. And there's nobody that's going to be able to hold Hays County, attorney ad litems, CASA, judges, CPS workers, ombudsmen accountable. Nobody. Not one person. So, check the reports. You might get lucky. A judge might decide to actually look at your evidence and say, okay, CPS, you lied, so I'm going to dismiss your case for you trying to terminate the parents' rights because you're lying. We can't do lying, okay? But chances are, if it's a CPS court, they're more than likely going to align with CPS. You might have to use thousands of dollars to file an appeal and hope and pray that the Court of Appeals will do their job, right? Look at the evidence, not testimony and people slandering, but what's the evidence, right? You got to have evidence. You can't just be slandering people. So with that being said, August came along and the judge had already said there's not going to be any more movement on this case. I will not hear nothing until I get the mandate back from the Court of Appeals. Well, in the meantime, we have September coming along and actually August, and CPS files a discovery request. They actually want to know something about me. Why? Because the lawyer that was on the case before this is no longer with CPS. They've given this case to a new lawyer who knows nothing about the case, starting in July of 2023. Your Honor, I don't know anything about the case. I'm just now trying to get up to speed. That was in July. Now comes August and he does a discovery request, which cost me thousands of dollars, right? To get the information to my lawyer and to actually get that back to them. So what was in their discovery request was a bunch of nonsense, right? They just wasted my money is what they did. They used a tactic to basically use up some more of my retainer. And that was discouraging again, right? So by this time, we're in August, and we've had one CPS caseworker who was transferred the case in March to an adoptive caseworker, and that adoptive caseworker was no longer on the case, and that caseworker was removed from that case, and then they added a different adoptive caseworker in August. So now you have an adoptive caseworker in August who's going to be giving the judge an update on how the children are doing, as if they've had some type of significant history with the children. September comes along, October comes along, and still nothing. November comes along, and finally the mandate is issued. Thank goodness, right? November the 8th, I guess thereabout. So then here come the holidays, November, December, January. But what we don't know, or what we weren't informed of or notified of, was that there was going to be a permanency hearing again in December, December 14th. So this whole time, I'm trying to get these children adopted and being blocked and not given due process. These children are still in this foster placement, struggling and needing more and more medication. At least one of them is needing stronger medication, asking for a double dose now because they're not doing well. They're not doing well at all. So they're not even getting along anymore. They actually need family therapy sessions in order for them to get along. Not only do they need sessions individually, now the brothers that were in my care now need family therapy sessions because they're unable to get along. And that is heartbreaking to me. So while this is going on, it's very clear to me that all these agencies are not in favor of me adopting these 4 brothers. Why? I have no idea. As I just read to you some very affirming statements, nothing has been explained to me why. So November comes along, December comes along, and we show up at December hearing. And guess who shows up there? The current foster placements. And now they're involved. Now they're engaged. Nobody's filed a petition for adoption at this point. They're just there to make sure that I don't get the children, the 4 sibling brothers. So that's interesting how a foster family would really be so against all these 4 brothers being in one home, right? What were they told? I don't know. Well, here's the story. Now you know the truth. Not that it would matter, I don't guess. So December 14th comes along. My attorney is telling the judge we still have not been able to get our hearing. CASA is complaining that the reason that these children don't have permanency is because they're waiting on me and that I haven't scheduled a hearing. And so now CASA supervisor is basically trying to say that these children are needing permanency, and that the reason that they don't have permanency is because of me. I haven't scheduled my hearing yet. Okay, but she didn't say that they had blocked me all year long and objected to me getting a hearing all year long. But my lawyer was able to bring that to the judge's attention and remind her of how CPS had objected to our hearing for an entire year now. And so when she heard that, she said, that's fine. Then if you're not making yourself available, I am ordering you to go next door and to come up with a date for 6 hours that Ms. Hernandez can have in regard to her petition for adoption. My petition for adoption had been on file for 14 months. On December the 14th, 2023, the foster parents had not even submitted a petition for adoption yet at this point. Nothing. But on December the 19th, they did. They finally filed their petition for adoption for the foster children. The 4 siblings, 2 in one home and 2 in another home, right? So they feel that it's good, that this is good for 4 sibling brothers to be separated for the rest of their life. Why? I don't know why any adoptive parent would think that. I would never think that would be a good thing. Especially when the reports are showing that they're continually to decline emotionally, mentally, and medically. But it's okay. They still want what they want. So on January the 10th, I get my hearing. And before the district judge there in Hays County. And I present the information that I have on why and all the progress that the children made in my care, right? On how well they did and how I'm prepared to actually take on the 4 siblings, all of the things that I've done already and research that I've made to be up to speed on how I can quickly get these children some medical and emotional behavioral health. I discussed all the things that I was prepared to do. I moved out of my master bedroom and bought 4 beds, right, so that they could be already in the same room. I bought them furniture so they would be taking the master bedroom and the master bathroom attached. I had already done research into some schools where that took special needs children and had those programs so that they could all attend the same school and not have to attend different schools, because some schools offer the services and some don't. So I'd already looked into all that. I actually looked into a behavioral health place that was able to take all 4 brothers within 2 weeks of submitting my application so that they can be seen immediately by a behavior therapist and work on these behaviors and help them to get back on track, right? Because now they're going to be all together. I gave reasons to the judge as to why I think it would be best to disrupt the children one more time. And my reason was that in the past 6 previous times that they had been disrupted from their placement, every single one of those times had been losing an additional family member. So they lost their mom, then they lost their grandma, then they lost their 2 brothers. And so now they're just left with their own 2 selves, right? And they're separated from all of their family. I explained to the judge that the reason that this disruption would have been different is that this disruption, this move would be to reunite the family, whereas in the past 6 times it's been to separate the family. So that was my reasoning for her considering them to be moved one more time, because then they would be together, right? And there's no one else in my home. They would have my undivided attention like they did for the previous 18 months that they were with me. And in addition to that, I was able to discuss in the hearing how I had been working with a company that employs me from home. So I'll be working from home. And I had already been working from home. And that at the point of placement in terms of an adoption, I would have 21 weeks off of my job. 21 weeks off with pay. And all benefits still in place so that they can have an opportunity to reunite and rebond again. In addition to that, I expressed that I had also saved 3 weeks of my vacation so that I could be off for 6 months and still have my job security. In addition to that, my testimony was that I also had unlimited sick time and unlimited personal time with my job, and let them know that if there was any indication where they were needing to be at a doctor appointment, My job was very flexible. I had very flexible hours. Um, in addition to that, I also informed her that I had with my company 20 days of backup child care. That means that in the event that I needed to be at work for whatever reason and I couldn't take a personal or sick day, the company provided a company benefit for 20 days out of the year where I could get someone to come in my house and do childcare in my home, like for whatever reason, right? Let's say they had a surgery or whatever and they needed to recover and they could be cared for here while I was working. So another amazing benefit, right? What in addition to that, I explained to the judge that my job also offered 24-hour a day, 7 days a week crisis response behavioral health, right? Amazing, perfect, right? Because these children have behavior issues. I would have access to that 24/7. So all this information and all this preparation, and of course, the most important thing, right, that the department was supposed to prove to the judge was that when there is a situation where the Department of Family and Protective Services does not consent, they have to provide a good reason for withholding consent of that petition for adoption. Okay? Which was something that they did not do. Okay? They did not do that. My attorney presented our case, and at the end, in closing statements, he reminded the judge that the department must prove with good reason why they are withholding consent of these four brothers being adopted together. And the testimony of the attorney for the department said, Your Honor, and I'm just paraphrasing, right? Your Honor, we don't consent to Mrs. Hernandez having these children. Okay? We want the other family to have these children. Okay? And we don't have a good reason. We don't have a good reason. We don't want her to have the children. We don't want this petition to adoption to go through. Mind you, my petition for adoption was filed 14 months ago, and the current placement's petition for adoption was filed 14 days before my hearing. So, you would think that any reasonable person, with all of the information provided, in addition to that, let me just say this. The only thing that the department and the attorney ad litem's and CASA did on that day at my hearing was slander me. They slandered me about my first adoption placement that I spoke to you about. And isn't it true that you stopped giving this child medication? Yes, it's true. But then I had to go back and explain to the judge that it was the psychiatrist who had actually discontinued the medication. And isn't it true that you lied here? And isn't it true that you didn't tell the foster care agency that you got licensed with that you had actually had your home closed? Actually, that's not true because I have an email. So they were just slandering me. Everything that they said I had emails for to support that what they were saying was incorrect. It was a smear campaign, and they had no documentation to provide or prove anything other than, and isn't it true? And isn't it true? And every time they said, and isn't it true? I would say, no, that's not true. And then I would have to give more context to the judge to explain where this is coming from, if anything at all. So what's the purpose of this story? The purpose of this story is that my heart is broken because the judge actually denied my petition for adoption. The judge did not do her job. Her order states that after reviewing testimony and evidence. Well, the department did not provide any evidence at all. All they did was slander me the entire time. So, it's important for me to share the story with you because I believe that I'm not the only person who's experienced this. And I want to share with the biological parents, check the reports. They're probably faulty and fraudulent. Check your records. Make sure that the amount of schools that they say that they've supposedly only been to is only the amount of schools that is accurate. They had misdiagnoses on there. They had art dates that never even happened. I have the reports that show that they were fraudulent, and I actually have the supporting document to show that I actually can debunk what they have in their reports. And if anybody would just look at all of the reports that have been submitted, you would see that they're not consistent. They lied to the judge. But I mean, at the same time, the judge has the responsibility to read those things. The judge has the responsibility to make them accountable for what they're writing. And actually, during this process, I tried to apply at 2 more agencies to get licensed, and I did not get licensed. Still have not been able to get an adoption license because this foster care agency continues to put in their transfer paperwork that I violated client confidentiality. So I am blacklisted from being able to adopt or help any children in Texas to have a home. And who's going to stop them? Me? You? Who's going to stop this agency in Houston, Texas? I'm sad to say that this foster care agency has truly played on the emotions of good-meaning sponsors. Some of them are businesses, and some of them are faith communities. Some of them are churches. They're churches. They support this agency. Do you support this foster care agency's decision to block me from being an adoptive parent? Well, you are supporting that by funding them. You're supporting that. And here's the worst part. Let me encourage you to just go to the Child Care Licensing Regulation website and type in the foster care agency that you are currently licensed with and look at their deficiencies. They have violations against them, and they'll tell you what the violations are. When I looked them up, they had a high deficiency of a person, actually a foster family, who had taken ice and poured it on a foster child to wake them up out of bed. That's abuse. And do you know that the response of this agency was not to close their home. It was to let the Child Care Licensing Agency know, we have retrained this family into doing the correct technique. But yet you closed my home and blacklisted me based on client confidentiality that you haven't even been able to provide yet. So you're using your power to prevent me from giving children in Texas a permanent placement. Wow. And let me go on to say that when you look at the foster care agency's deficiencies on the Child Care Licensing website, this agency also had a deficiency that was very, very dangerous, and where they allowed the foster child to have access to their psychotropic medication, and they overdosed on their medication. Okay, I don't think they died, but I believe they needed medical care. And that's a big problem. However, their response to that deficiency was, no, we've retrained this family as well. We've done some retraining. So why did you close my home? What retraining option did you give me? What client confidentiality violation did you show me so that I would know next time to do better? Let me be clear. People who foster in Texas, legislators, senators, whoever you are, even the senators weren't able to help me. I contacted my senator since June of 2023, and they still have not been able to get me to where I can adopt. Not at all. They can do nothing. They have no power. Nothing. All they do is say, well, the foster care agency said this. Well, I just told you that. And they didn't even provide you with the proof. So how is it that a foster care agency can violate a person's civil rights, constitutional rights of giving children a permanent placement and just sit there and have no power to do anything about it? No consequences at all. But yet you hold these 6-hour special committees. Why do you have a special committee if you're not willing to do anything about it? You're not interested. You're really not interested. Why is it that during your 6-hour special committee, House of Representatives and Senators of Texas, you're not willing to hear solutions? Because I contacted your offices and you weren't willing to listen to the solutions that were very, very, very simple, like not complicated at all. And you still haven't contacted me to find out what some of the solutions could be in regards to fixing this problem with the foster care system. Very no-nonsense solutions, very practical, very, very practical. It's a problem in Texas to be a child and a parent, because your rights can be stripped from you just like that. And I have spent tens of thousands of dollars to try to get these precious foster children back into my home so that they can have their own family and be raised without any interruptions and any other additional children, so that they can have a place to heal. But I have not been given that opportunity. And do you think I have tens of thousands of more dollars to appeal this situation? I don't. Just like many of the other parents in Texas who don't. So, what do? The government has so much power, but actually they really don't have power. They only have the power that you give them because your home is available. You're the one giving them the power. I'm the one who is giving them the power. The power to hurt people's lives, children and biological parents. And that's a sad truth. The fact that foster care agencies can decide whether or not you get to adopt or make a child a permanent placement, give them a permanent placement, that is very terrifying. I would welcome anybody who's been in the foster care system to make a comment down below and tell me how many people didn't get adopted. Well, why would they? It doesn't pay to get adopted. They make more money in foster care. Why? Because the foster care agency no longer has you as a client to bring in income. That's 4 kids right there that are no longer putting food on their table. If you really want to make a difference in the people of Texas and you want to be fostering and you really want to make a difference, let me encourage you to do this. Foster families, and when necessary, adopt. That's how you know that your efforts are going to be contributing to a good thing. You don't need the government to give you permission to do something kind. However, we have been conditioned through media, through news, through awareness, through laws, that guess what? If you want to help somebody, you got to get a background check. Your home has to be perfect. Your home has to do this. You got to do that. You got to tell us, you got to do what we say. Well, that sounds like slavery. Last I checked, we live in America. This is a free country. And you really don't need the government to give you permission to do something kind for someone in need. Let me encourage you that if your heart is truly, really, genuinely, sincerely concerned for the people and the children and the parents of Texas, then just do the right thing. Because outside of that, being a foster placement, you don't know why those children are there, and you will never know. Are you willing to take that risk? Why? Why would you take that risk? Just do what you can. Love your neighbor. I challenge you to do that. If you see a need, meet the need. You need to get permission from the government to do a kind deed. You know how many services there are nowadays where you don't even have to go near their house? You can order something for them and have it dropped off at their home. You don't need to make contact with people with all this new technology and all these services that are offered. Pick up and drop off services. Let me encourage you to hear my story. Let me encourage you to wake up. Don't think that being a foster parent is actually doing something good when you don't know the truth. And if CPS and CASA and attorney ad litem's are willing to lie to a judge and give bad information to a judge, what makes you think they're going to give good information to you?